Hey there. I just came from a listing appointment and it went pretty well. And I thought I should tell you about it. So it was pretty cool. Some people reached out to me who had seen one of my videos, which, hey, that's great. Um, and they said, we know you're an investor and we are really curious about what we need to do to our house before we list it. Like, what improvements should we make before we list our house? So the situation is it's a job relocation and they know about it way ahead of time. So they're not looking to sell until for like 6 months from now. So we've got a long time. And it's really great that they came to me this early because that way there's time to make a plan and do some renovations if they need it, instead of being rushed or having to compromise. So first thing I did was I looked up information about their house. Right, I go to the tax record. I look on the public websites like Zillow, see what's out there, see what the Zestimate is, just so I know, right? Because that's information they're going to have looked at also, and I need to be aware of how their house is positioned in the market. So start there, look at the sites, look at the tax records, and then after that, so the house hadn't been sold in a while. There was not an old listing I could look at. So I didn't know for sure how many bedrooms the house had. Don't know for sure if the square footage that's listed is correct. And those things make a pretty big difference in the price of a house. The number of bathrooms, the square footage, all that stuff. So I needed to verify all that. And I knew I needed to get into the house, take a look around. I was also really curious to speak to these potential sellers a little more to understand their motivation, to understand their timeline, understand what's important to them. So we started off, we walked around the house a little bit. I let them show me around the house. And I asked a bunch of questions. They asked me a bunch of questions. And it was really great. I thought we were really getting to some important items that they were noticing about their house. We started off in the foyer. They had a really nice fireplace, and the house is already painted neutral colors. There aren't any crazy paint colors that should be changed. We went through to the kitchen. They were pretty concerned about the kitchen, so we spent a lot of time there. And the kitchen, the question is, do we fully renovate the kitchen? Do we touch up the kitchen? Do we do nothing to the kitchen? And we looked at it for a couple minutes. They showed me some kind of big, obvious things that they wanted to fix. But then I asked that, why don't we see the rest of the house? Let's circle back to the kitchen, and we can then deal with the kitchen in context of the entire house, because that's really an important consideration. You don't just look at one room and say, should I improve it or not? Well, it's in the context of the rest of the house. If we put in a brand new kitchen, but the house had original bathrooms and the original layout, well, maybe we wouldn't get the amount of return we would think, because again, it doesn't kind of match in context with the rest of the house. So anyway, we continued our tour. They have a first level bedroom, which we looked at, which was pretty cool. It's got some decent closets, even in an older house. So that was a plus. And then they brought up a question. They said, well, is this a problem with the bedroom on the first floor? And I was able to tell them, actually, no, especially around here in Catonsville, first level bedroom is actually a bonus. A lot of people are looking for this one level living. They may have older people living in the house, where it's easier to not have to navigate stairs every day. So I was able to tell them that I think that's actually a feature, not a strike against them. And they were happy to hear that. So we continued on. We went upstairs. The house originally would have just kind of had an open second floor. Somebody had come in and partitioned it a little bit, and to make some usable space, which is great. They also have a brand new. We also noticed a brand new bathroom on the second floor, which is a big bonus if that bathroom's already done. So the 2 bedrooms have weird little closets on the second floor because the eaves of the house come down, and so there's space in the eaves with a very low ceiling that they're able to use for storage. Now, I mean, that space doesn't count towards the square footage of the home. Unfortunately, the ceiling is too low, but it's still usable storage space. So so the second floor had 2 bedrooms, a full bathroom, and also an office area or like a study, uh, an area that's open at the top of the stairs where you could put a TV and a couch or a desk or something and work or even have a TV room for the kids or something up there. So that was cool. And then it was time to go to the basement. Now the basement is where I can tell a lot. The mechanical systems are down there, the plumbing, the electrical, HVAC. You're going to find out, what does the basement look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Um, in Catonsville, there are definitely a lot of damp basements, older houses without proper drainage. And so when we went down there, first thing I noticed, it had a new floor. And then we looked at the perimeter, and they've got a brand new drainage system. So somebody had come in a few years ago and done a new perimeter drain and poured a level slab in the basement, which was great. And so it seemed very dry. And that had happened. They had done this work after that big flood in 2018. I don't know if you remember, your basement probably flooded too. But in 2018, there was a massive flood, and a lot of basements got wet around here. So it was after that they had that improvement done, and it's been dry since. So that's a great thing. We were also in the basement. We're also able to see how old all the systems are. So you look at the water heater, look for the date code on the manufacturer's label. Same thing on the furnace or the air handlers. Anything like that, you can see how old those appliances are, and buyers are always interested because they're going to want to know what they need to replace or what they should budget to replace in the near future. If your furnace is 40 years old, or if your water heater is 25 years old, you may want to plan to replace it relatively soon. So the basement felt dry, didn't smell, wasn't musty. However, it was very low ceiling. So they had brought that floor up, which means, you're a little bit closer to the ceiling. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any chance you could finish this basement. And that's always something to look for in Catonsville. A lot of, the old houses would never have had finished basements, but a modern renovation certainly is to take that space and make it usable. There's a bunch of not tricks. You have to do it right, because if you don't, and the water gets in, you can just kind of waste the money that you spend down there. Anyway, this basement, no chance of it being finished because the ceiling height just wasn't going to be there. You'd have to come in and dig out the entire floor. You'd have to dig it down a couple feet, and that's a massive expense, which can be done. I mean, that is an option, and some people do it. And sometimes it is a good way to get a bunch of extra finished square footage in your house, in your existing house. It just costs a lot to get all that dirt out of there and to pour a new slab and get the drainage right. So we did all that. We walked outside. We checked out the landscaping and the deck and the exterior paint and just overall how the house looks. We were also at that point. We also were able to talk about. So they want to list their house later in the year. Right now it's February, so everything's gray and dull. They have a vision of it not only works with their timeline for their job relocation, but they also have wonderful gardens, really nice landscaping, wildflower beds in the front, and they know that in June or July is really the peak time, is really the best time of year that their house and all the landscaping looks the best. After that, in the hot days of August, sometimes the grass dies back. You start to get brown patches. So we were talking about getting professional photos done, and wouldn't it be great if everything was in full bloom, and that would really be the optimum time to photograph the house. And I agree, absolutely. Everything in bloom, lush and green, bright sunny day. The pictures are going to be killer, both inside and out. It lends to the inside pictures as well, having a nice, bright sunny day. Everything looks open and clean and bright. So at this point, we had toured the house, and it was time to circle back to the kitchen so we could sit down and talk some more, but also to talk in some more detail about the kitchen and what's going on there. I think it's really the main room in the house where they can use some improvement. So they had a couple questions for me, which was great. I'm always expecting questions, and a lot of times they're the same, but these were a couple interesting questions here. Some of the general questions that they started asking were about the more recent changes in what you have to sign and how the commission structure works for agents. Because one of my initial questions was, when is the last time you either bought or sold a house, to get a sense of, how familiar they are with the process. A lot of times, maybe they've only done this once, right? Maybe they moved here when they were a young family or just starting a family, and now it's 20 years later and they're ready to move on. Maybe they've only bought one house, and so the experience today, I think, is going to be a lot different. So they had some great questions. We went over how now the seller only is responsible for signing an agreement that explicitly states how much they're going to pay their listing agent, and that the buyer's agent then is going to come and maybe ask for the traditional amount of buyer's agent commission, or maybe not. And things could be the same as they've been for the last few years, or with the new rules and regulations, things could be a little different, and we may have some new obstacles to overcome. So we also talked about that the potential sellers, they were going to talk to other agents. I was just one person that they reached out to. As usual, a relative has a friend who's an agent, and so why don't you try this person? Or the mother-in-law, is involved and wants to go in a certain direction or has certain opinions. And we talked about how that's totally fine. It's no problem. I would love to have your business, and you've got a great house, and it will definitely sell. But if we're not the right fit, it's a lot about a personality fit. And if you feel comfortable with what I'm saying, and if I feel comfortable with what you're saying, it's like dating, right? It's you have a conversation and you figure out if you're compatible, and sometimes you are and sometimes you're not. No big deal. So we talked about a couple scenarios about when to bring the house to market. I gave them the option that they may be able to ask for a rent back period so that they could continue to live here while they're looking for their new house out of town. That was something that they hadn't considered before. We talked about how a lot of houses in Catonsville move very quickly. Most houses sell in less than a week. We talked about the coming soon period and how there are new regulations about the coming soon period, allowing houses to remain as coming soon for a lot longer than they used to be able to. And that kind of shifts strategy sometimes, or it can. Again, it depends on how the house is listed. If you We talked about a lot of times a coming soon listing has one photo or no photos, might have a one sentence remark or not even any remarks or description, versus a coming soon listing with full professional photos and a nicely detailed listing, how that looks to potential buyers. We also got into what they currently owe on the property and their mortgage situation, because that's important to know. And we also talked about, decluttering and staging. And we spent a bunch of time on that. The homeowners were kind of worried, a little bit apologetic about, I'm sorry you have to see my mess, that kind of thing. And that's not a big deal at all. And for me, I don't see the mess. I'm looking at the house, the bones, the structure, the systems. As an investor, I'm used to looking past, cluttered shelves or, an overflowing trash bin or whatever it might be, to see if there's real value past those things. But in any house that's getting ready to go to market, decluttering is a huge thing. They had a lot of stuff in the basement. They need some time to go through it. Totally fine. I offered some assistance. There are ways to make this easier. Dumpster, storage unit, moving company, junk haulers. Taking runs to the dump yourself. There's lots of options, and I've done them all because I've gotten my hands dirty in lots of these projects around Catonsville, flipping houses, renovating houses, cleaning out houses for families who just want to pick up and move and don't want to do anything. That's a really interesting, sometimes people are not public at all, and they don't feel, they kind of feel ashamed of the mess that's in their house, and they really don't want pictures out there, and they don't want people walking through, and they kind of don't know what to do with all their stuff. Well, that's a situation I'm great at also. We can come in and take care of all of that for a seller. Whatever they want, really. The house doesn't have to be listed publicly. There are other ways to find buyers. They don't have to deal with all their clutter and mess. We can negotiate a way to get that done. We either hire service, do it ourselves, help the homeowners do it. There's lots of options. So to wrap up, what I said to the sellers today was that the next step was going to be from me, that I was going to do more research. I was going to pick comparable properties around the area, and in Catonsville, there are a lot of very small neighborhoods, and sometimes you can't just go one block off or two blocks off and still have comparable properties. A lot of times, one block up, one block down, the style is completely different. The lot sizes are completely different. So that's where the real local expertise comes in. You have to know what areas really are comparable with other areas. So in this case, I'm able to, in the MLS, I'm able to select a very specific area. I draw a polygon around a map section that I like. Then I can look for comparable sales. I like to use sales within the past year. Anything older, it kind of misses. It can kind of, might not be as accurate because the market was probably in a different situation. So about a year's worth of comps is really all that's valid. And if there are a lot, we can narrow that down to, we can even go more recent and do a 6-month search. Anyway, so I will find those comparable properties, get them into a report so that we can see all the details and we can look side by side at the features, and we can really understand the story behind how those other properties sold and whether that story is going to apply to this property as well. And so the plan is I'll come up with that CMA, comparative market analysis, and we'll make another appointment with the sellers, go back over, sit down face to face. I'll have all that stuff compiled, very easy to see. We'll go through it together, and then we can look. And really, I mean, looking at the comparable properties is really great. You look at the photos and you say, oh, that kitchen is way better than this one. So now I know, how to adjust the price accordingly. Or, out of all the comps, none of them have finished basements. Okay, well, great. So then maybe we're not in maybe that unfinished basement is not such a strike against us in this case. So we'll be able to tell a different story once we start looking at those comps, and we'll be able to figure out how we want to position this house to sell. I'll make my pitch at that point, and then my goal is to try to get the listing. I'll have a listing agreement filled out, ready to go. The blank space will be where the price gets written in, because we're not gonna write that in until we talk about it and see if we can come to some sort of agreement about how much we're gonna list the house for. If we can do that, come to an agreement, everybody's happy, we'll sign a listing agreement. It'll be for a certain amount of time to list the house at a certain price. At that point, I will have also explained my marketing plan with the marketing budget, the amount of money that I'm going to spend out of my pocket to market the property. And we'll talk in detail about the strategy. Are we going to use a coming soon period? What are we going to post during that period? How long is it going to be? And then, what else are we going to add to our listing to make it special? Are we going to do a 3D visualization? Are we going to do a virtual tour or a video tour? We'll talk about all that, come to an agreement. And then the goal for me is to get a signed listing agreement. And the goal for them is to pick an agent that they feel comfortable with and get on with it. So that we'll hopefully get there by the end of the next meeting. But for now, this was a great introduction with this couple. They've got a really nice house in a fantastic Catonsville location. So stay tuned. I'll probably be talking about this property a little bit more, and hopefully if I get the listing, a lot more. So for now, I'm Matt, and I help people buy and sell houses in Catonsville.